Hi, my name is Stephen Thompson, and I composed I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. This song is based on the poem Sympathy by Paul Laurence Dunbar. Paul Dunbar grew up in the era of American slavery, and although he was not a slave himself, he was the son of former slaves. He was a talented poet and was the first black writer to achieve national fame as a writer.
I know what the caged bird feels when the sun is bright on the upland slopes, soft the wind through the springing grass, and the river flows like a stream of glass. When the first bird sings and the first bud opes, and the faint perfume from its chalice steals, I know what the caged bird feels. I know what the caged bird feels. I know why the caged bird beats his wing. 'Tis blood is red on the cruel bones, for he must fly back to judge and clean, when he fain would be on a bough swing, and the pensive still thrives, and they thrive again with the sting. I know why he beats his wing. I know why he beats his wing. Ooh, sing, he sings. I know why the caged bird sings. When his wing is bruised and his bosom sore, when he beats his boys and would be free, it is not a song of joy and glee, but a prayer he sends from within his heart, but a plea that upward to heaven he flees. I know why the caged bird sings. I
Welcome to First Parish in Needham. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation founded in 1711 along with the town of Needham. We are proud to be a welcoming congregation to people of all gender identities and sexual orientations, a green sanctuary for our efforts to protect the environment, and a Level 2 sanctuary supporting congregation for our commitment to immigration justice. Whoever you are, whatever your background, and wherever you're watching from, you are welcome, and we are so glad you are with us today. My name is Mary Ann McGowan, and I have been a member here for the past 17 years. I was drawn to First Parish because of its welcoming community and commitment to social justice. It provided a safe space to, as our covenant says, search for spiritual truth. I currently serve as one of the leaders of the newly formed Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Although the work of DEI at First Parish is not new, our committee is hoping to partner with all groups at First Parish as we continue on our journey toward being truly equitable and inclusive. And the 8th principle is a big part of that journey. Our first meeting of the DEI committee will be next Sunday afternoon, October 3rd at 3 o'clock, outside the church, with a Zoom-in option for those who cannot be here in person. Please join us. As you know, our church building is still closed because of COVID-19. However, we plan to have an outdoor gathering each Sunday after the service as long as the weather allows. And we are offering many opportunities for social gatherings virtually throughout the week so that we can stay connected to one another. Please check the bell notes, emailed newsletter, or visit our website, uuneedham.org, for details. If you're watching this service as it live streams, please take a moment now to say hello and introduce yourself in the YouTube chat box. Welcome again to everyone, and good morning. Welcome again to everyone, and good morning.
Through the course of this Sunday service, we'll share the history of our denomination's 7 principles and 6 sources, how the 8th principle came to be proposed, and why First Parish's new DEI committee encourages our congregation to vote to adopt the 8th principle during this particular church year. Some of you involved in small group ministry have already held discussions on the 8th principle last winter and spring, but for many of you, we know this is new. So as we light our chalice, symbol of our faith, we read aloud the proposed 8th principle of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. We light our chalice for journeying together, for spiritual wholeness, for diversity and multiculturalism, for accountability, and for beloved community.
There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged and think my work's in vain. But then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead sin-sick soul. If you cannot preach like Peter, if you cannot pray like Paul, you can tell the love of Jesus and say he died for all. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul.
In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the covenant is a set of promises the membership of a congregation strives to honor with one another and out in the world. Though we cannot gather in person during this time, we strive to live these promises every day. Please say along with me from home the words of our parish covenant as shown on the screen. We gather as a loving community to encourage and comfort one another. We gather as a diverse community to support each other in our search for spiritual truth. We gather as a service community to live our beliefs through action and care for our world.
To know them? Emma.
Fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah, fight, flight, or freeze.
Awesome. All right. All right, we'll let you act out fighting. Oh, you're gonna fight with your cat?
Like trying to Cody's trying to fight me right now.
That's great. Okay. Who would like to act out running away? So flight.
There, ran away.
That was awesome because Tess followed you. I love this. We also have freeze.
Do you want to do freeze with Casey, Rafi?
No. I'm really good at freezing.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
That was great. If you want to do hide, which is probably a combination of flight and freeze combined.
Hide like this. Yeah.
Do you want to do a combination of flight or freeze by hiding for us behind your stuffed animal?
Yeah, he said he shook his head yes.
Okay, awesome.
And his favorite game to play is hide and seek. So that works out well.
Okay. That was great.
Hiding.
Great. Hiding. When we notice that we're fighting, like Emma did with her cat, or running away like Henry and Tess did, or freezing like Casey did, or hiding in plain sight like Rafi and Owen then did, it's a good time for our brain to say, stop, I'm feeling some stress, and what can we do to feel better and make sure we stay safe? So that's why we have our coping cat unicorn here. Any ideas for what we can do when we're feeling stressed to make sure we feel safe? We can start with number 1. We talk about it a lot. Breathing bear. Who wants to role model taking some deep breaths for us? All right, I see Henry's hand up. Awesome, thank you, Henry. So for everyone else, 3 deep breaths in. Ready? 1, 2, 3. In and out. And in and out. And in and out. We do always feel better with those deep breaths. Something about that. Science tells us it's good for us. How about snuggling with our stuffed animals? Does snuggling with your stuffed animals help you feel better? When you feel in your Hello Kitty blanket? Who do you like to snuggle with besides your stuffed animals when you're feeling stressed? Casey.
My parents and Rafi.
Thank you. Yes, our parents and our siblings. Snuggling with them can help us feel better. We're going to do our treasure hunt in the house for this one. Ready? When you are stressed out, when you feel that fight, flight, or freeze, what do you have in your house that's going to help you feel better? Go.
I like to read books, especially mystery books, when I'm stressed out.
Rafi, did you want to say what you got to make you feel better when you feel upset? Yeah. Tell Roberta and all the friends. I think he brought Bronny, who's mine.
It's now in my room.
He's a very nice vegetarian dinosaur. And he's
Okay.
from when I was little.
That's great.
All right.
Lego.
Legos. Yay. What is the Legos of?
Frozen.
Ooh, that's a great example. Tess, you want to go?
My Hello Kitty.
That's awesome. All right, Henry.
I have two things. One thing is this, Juji. And the second thing, is the iPad, which I can't show you because I'm using it. Here.
I love all these great examples. All right, and Emma.
I like to just snuggle myself in a blanket.
I love that too. No matter how old you get, you always have a favorite blanket to snuggle in. Well, thank you all so much for those great examples.
It is now time to share with one another our joys and concerns from the last week. These joys and concerns were submitted to me at internminister at uneedham.org by the Thursday before the service at midnight. As our service is live streamed to YouTube, we cannot guarantee that your joys, concerns, sorrows, and milestones will stay within the First Parish community. If you would like to share more privately, you're invited to join our Zoom social hour immediately after the service, where we will have a second sharing of joys and concerns. If you did not submit a candle but would like to share with the community this morning, you're invited to either enter your message into the Zoom or YouTube chat box, or share your own candle in the Zoom social hour. And you are always welcome to reach out to the Pastoral Care Associate of the Week, Judy Hadrick, for pastoral care or to share more privately. If you're missing hearing each other's voices during this beloved ritual, may this also serve as a reminder to reach out to one another after the service. May this beloved community be sustained by your creativity and care for each other during this time. Our first candle this morning is a candle of concern from the First Parish staff team for the Haitian refugees in Del Rio, Texas, and Acuna, Mexico, who now, caught at the border, face rapid deportation due to the ongoing enforcement of Title 42 on the U.S. side and tightened immigration controls on the Mexico side. Not to mention the insidious trauma of being forced to leave their country of origin and acute trauma from the severe and chronic maltreatment of these refugees at our border. For all the joys and sorrows that we still hold in our hearts, and for the prayers of our neighbors near and far, we light one final candle. May the peace in this sanctuary be felt too in each of your homes, as we remember that even though apart, we are still deeply connected. Amen. Let's take a quiet moment in prayer together. As our hearts reach out to those Haitian refugees in Del Rio and Acuna, as our hearts reach out to our siblings and cousins in Ethiopia, where the hunger crisis fueled by famine has worsened in the last week due to the de facto humanitarian aid blockade in effect in the Tigray region. As we grieve and cry out against further anti-abortion legislation in Texas, last week threatening values that we hold dear as you use, of bodily autonomy and reproductive justice. And for all those struggling in abusive relationships and an inequitable justice system that ignores missing Black and brown people. Let's take a quiet moment together. As our despair and outrage turn to advocacy for more humane immigration policies, for getting aid to those who desperately need it, and for gender, racial, and reproductive justice. May we be a part of making a different world so. Blessed be, and amen. Please join us now in singing from home our meditative hymn this morning, We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder. The lyrics and music will appear on your screens.
We are climbing Jacob's ladder.
Many of you already know that Unitarian Universalism is a non-creedal religious tradition. That means that instead of gathering together in a shared creed of spiritual beliefs, we gather in a shared covenant of how we will learn, grow, and be together in love, diversity, and service, as we say every Sunday at church.
But beyond our congregational covenant here at First Parish, in Unitarian Universalism, we have our nationwide 7 principles. They are a big part of our covenant together. With thanks to our colleague, Euro-American UU minister, Reverend Karen Johnston, we'll talk a little more about what a big deal the 7 principles are.
We know they are a big deal because we have so many ways to talk about them, to make sure different brains and bodies and ages understand them. There's this way, which is a list in English.
And then there's this way, which is the list in Spanish. You can also read our principles in languages like Arabic and Thai.
And there's this way of understanding the principles, which is in simpler language.
In our First Parish meeting house, we also have the 7 principles and both of our hymnals printed in Braille.
And there's this cool principles wheel by Euro-American UU ministers Reverends Ian Riddell and Kimberly Debut, which show a non-sequential way to think about the relationships between the different principles, with the first principle emphasized here in the center, and the other 5 encapsulated by the 7th principle.
All these ways are focused on the 7 principles. But when Unitarian Universalism first came into being in 1961, there were only 6 principles, and they had very different language than our principles today. In the 1980s, the UU Women's Federation and their feminist allies led the charge to remove gender-exclusive language from our principles and add our 7th principle. In the 1960s, it didn't seem like such a big deal to use words like brotherhood and man in the principles, but thanks to second-wave feminism, we learned differently.
Because our principles are not a creed, we expect that we will modify or even totally redo them now and again. In the bylaws of our National Unitarian Universalist Association, we are supposed to review our principles and sources listed in Article 2 of our bylaws at least every 15 years, and then take a vote at our National General Assembly on any proposed changes. We most recently had a national conversation about adapting our principles in the early 2000s, and the UUA has recently brought together the Article 2 Commission to begin a new conversation about the principles. The UUA General Assembly also made a small but essential change to one of our sources to be more gender and age inclusive, less than 5 years ago. The June 2022 General Assembly will hear the Commission's initial recommendations.
Let us show you one more way to imagine our principles that was originally suggested by Euro-American UU minister, Reverend Barbara Wells ten Hove. It's called a keystone arch. This is like a doorway through which we enter into our faith journey as Unitarian Universalists.
It's cool because the 4th principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, is at the center, holding together the space for us to balance between each individual's inherent worth on the one hand and the needs of the great community of which we are a part on the other hand. But do doorways or archways ever exist all by themselves, just floating in thin air?
Not really, right? They're usually stabilized on the ground, a part of a larger building or structure.
So maybe there is a principle that is still missing? Maybe there's a new way of expressing our values that can make this archway into a building?
There might be. Just like we figured out almost 4 decades ago when we decided that the 7th principle was missing. Maybe the missing principle is the ground upon which the doorway is built, or maybe it can stabilize the other principles with extra support beams.
Maybe when we're co-creating a house of love and justice, we need to renovate and put on an addition every now and again.
Maybe if we add an eighth principle, we would get closer to the beloved community we dream about, where there is no systemic oppression of any kind, where we can say women's rights are human rights and trans people are divine and no human being is illegal and Black Lives Matter. We don't have to say those things in that future because the systems of oppression have been transformed in our congregation and in the wider world.
I want to stay a part of building this house of love and justice, engaging with the Article 2 Commission and reflecting on our principles. Will you join me? Article 2 Commission and reflecting on our principles. Will you join me?
As you may have noticed, we had a technical issue with our first hymn and the Time for All Ages showing an older clip from last April. It was sort of nice having visitors from the past and our wonderful kids. But this sort of thing happens in online worship. We would love to show you at least the Time for All Ages from Sarah Elizabeth at Social Hour, and then we will be editing that into our YouTube page for the future. So if you go back to watch this service again on YouTube later this week, you should be able to see the correct clip. This congregation has been supported by the volunteered time and treasure of its members and friends since its founding in 1711. This is a time in our service when we, the modern stewards of the church, offer what we can to build and sustain the congregation and the world we envision. For the rest of the month of September, which is just today, for the month of September, we are sharing the plate with Imagine Waterworks. Imagine Waterworks is a New Orleans-based nonprofit offering mutual aid support to those affected by Hurricane Ida, as well as climate justice advocacy and mitigation efforts in the longer term. The approach of Imagine Waterworks is interdisciplinary, working in Louisiana with residents, neighborhood associations, nonprofits, artists, families, scientists, academics, architects, small business owners, and government agencies to create various resources for the community, hold space for conversation, and develop hazard mitigation plans in Louisiana and nationwide. Their work in the wake of Hurricane Ida is life-saving and keeps in mind the intersectional barriers and access to resources to rebuild. To donate to today's offering, you can use one of three methods. You can use our Text to Give program through the number 73256 with the exact wording of You Need 'em space plate or pledge 22 space $ and the amount you want to give. You can mail a check to First Parish at 23 Dedham Avenue, or you can make a donation through our website, youneedem.org, and select Donate Now under the Giving box. Whichever way, remember to specify whether your donation is meant for the plate collection or for your annual pledge. Thank you for everything you are able to give to help support and sustain this congregation and the vital work of our community partners. Please take these next few moments to give what you can and know that it will be gratefully received.
There's a train a-coming. You don't need no baggage. You just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. You don't need no ticket. You just thank the Lord. So people get for the train to Jordan, picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key, open the doors and boredom, 'cause there's room for all among those loved the most. For the hopeless sinner who would hurt all mankind just to save his own. Have pity on those whose chances grow thinner, 'cause there's no hiding place from the kingdom's throne. So people get ready, there's a train a-coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. You don't need no ticket, you just thank the
Hi, I'm Vicki McCready's. I've been involved in the Racial Justice Task Force since around 2017, and also in the Reparations Task Force. And through these task forces, we have done quite a few things. We've done some services, we have had ideas for book clubs, for memorial, for history, to bring to the congregation. In 2019, I became aware of the UUA 8th Principle movement, and in early 2020, I went to my first UUA meeting put on by Paula Cole-Jones. And at that meeting, a number of UUs of color were invited to talk about their experience with the 8th Principle. And these were people, some of whom were longtime UUs, ministers even, some of whom were very new to UU and to their congregations. And as they spoke about what the 8th Principle, adoption or lack of adoption by their congregations meant to them, I had an epiphany, and that was that of all the things that we had come up to do, in the Racial Justice Task Force for reparations, the thing that we were being asked to do was to adopt the 8th Principle. And from that time, it became very important to me to bring that to our congregation, and also personally as the child of immigrants and a parent of a multiracial child. It means a lot to me personally to know that my congregation supports carrying out actions to make real a multicultural, beloved community.
Good morning. I am Cece Nyonganakanto. As a woman who has had the amazing privilege of growing up in 3 continents and finally choosing to be an American citizen, I fully support and affirm the eighth principle. I have been blessed with diverse lived experiences and have an abundance of gratitude for the phases in my life where I was immersed in different cultures. These colorful life experiences have gifted me with an interesting perspective and the ability to culture code switch. The eighth principle resonates with my soul. It embodies so much of what I treasure and what I hope to achieve in my lifetime. However, to be honest, even growing up in diverse communities has not accorded me any immunity from the human frailties of having been oppressive to others. I have also always not recognized the oppression in institutions, and I have not always taken impactful actions to dismantle racism. I personally feel that having principles that I can look to help guide me to be my best self is most helpful as I evolve into a human who strives for social justice and equity for my family, our community, and the world beyond it. I hope that you will join me in supporting the eighth principle and have a wonderful Sunday. Thank you.
I know this might not feel like a great moment to introduce you all to these big changes that may be coming in our denomination and to ask you to reflect on whether First Parish will make our collective voice heard in this national conversation. I know we're already rolling with a lot of changes and uncertainty and conflict. And I know there's comfort in the familiar and inspirational language of our current principles. I love them too. They matter to me as a convert to Unitarian Universalism. But those of you who have been Unitarian Universalists for a while, especially you lifelong UUs, you know those words have changed and are supposed to change. They're not a... And the time to principle is now, with the clock ticking toward the National General Assembly in June 2022, when the Article 2 Commission will present their proposed revised principles and purposes. So let's take a deep breath, in and out. Because people, get ready. The time is now. The eighth principle was developed beginning in 2013 by lay Unitarian Universalists who had already been working for years on diversity and anti-racism programming in our denomination. Black UU, Paula Cole-Jones, and white UU, Bruce Pollock Johnson, who spoke in a Zoom Lane Lyceum at our congregation last winter. Bruce's congregation in Philadelphia was the first in the nation to vote to adopt the eighth principle in May of 2017. Paula and Bruce have been working tirelessly since then to have it adopted more broadly at the local congregational level, in the hopes that that Article 2 Commission will incorporate it into their proposed revised principles and sources. The more UU congregations that adopt the eighth principle with the language created by Paula Cole-Jones and Bruce Pollock Johnson, the more likely it is that the spirit of encouraging accountable actions to dismantle systemic oppression will make it into the Article 2 revisions. Showing support for the eighth principle to the Article 2 Commission is not dissimilar from the organizing in the 1980s to revise the principles then, which was driven by women and other feminists to both start uprooting the foundational patriarchy and sexism in our historic faith and add the reality of interconnection into our principles. As eighth principle advocates have said, our existing principles imply the eighth principle, but do not explicitly hold us accountable for addressing those oppressions directly, especially at a systemic level. The eighth principle inspires serious reflection and action on anti-racism and anti-oppression within our congregation and our denomination. And like our welcoming congregation certification and ongoing renewal programs for LGBTQ inclusion and advocacy, The eighth principle is one of many moves toward an integrated, inclusive, equitable, and racially and culturally diverse Unitarian Universalism. Vicki and Cece already said much of what I would say. As Vicki said in her testimonial, our adopting the eighth principle is a public signal that we at First Parish are serious about the work of anti-racism and following the lead of our BIPOC UU siblings in spirit. At this year's National General Assembly, Black UU Minister Reverend Dr. Dorian Coulter said in a panel discussion on the eighth principle, "I knew intuitively that I was very well loved in my congregation, but for them to adopt the eighth principle was a tangible expression of that love. The fact that not only did they adopt the eighth principle, but began immediately doing the work of the eighth principle and harnessing changes in the congregation, in the attitudes and the minds of members of the congregation, it has given me a brand new congregation that I feel a part of, and it's my congregation." And as Cece said, the eighth principle offers us inspiration and courage to continue on our individual and collective journeys toward wholeness, diversity, and love. At that same panel discussion at last year's General Assembly, multiracial UU leader Leah Nagase said, "It gives me hope that we will truly be a multicultural faith. Especially being a mixed-race person, I know what it means to bring different cultures together, whether it's musically, spiritually, beliefs-wise, all of those things. So there's a hope for me that we really are building the beloved multicultural community, and I know how good that's going to be for everyone." Now, though your ministers and religious educator and the DEI committee members are already on board with adopting the eighth principle at First Parish as part of this big national campaign and as part of our work to dismantle white supremacy culture and promote racial equity, we've also been talking about the eighth principle amongst ourselves for more than a year. Beginning with this service today, we want to further expand the conversation in our church. DEI committee members will be present at Zoom social hour today to talk and answer questions. They're holding an open meeting next Sunday, the 3rd at 3 p.m., just as you heard Marianne say. And they're planning to share more information and more opportunities for us to reflect on what our adopting the eighth principle would mean for First Parish and for our denomination. I think back on First Parish's history with the Welcoming Congregations program in the 1990s. It took us 4 years of study, reflection, and conversation to vote to become a welcoming congregation, which was a long but needed amount of time. And we were one of the first 100 UU congregations in the United States to vote to become a welcoming congregation. We were on the leading edge. And maybe we won't be on the leading edge with the eighth principle. Already, 117 UU congregations and organizations from Massachusetts to Tennessee to Hawaii have adopted the eighth principle. Maybe we'll have conversations this fall and winter and realize we need more time to reflect on it, that we won't make a public collective statement on the eighth principle before June of 2022. That's not so far away, and I understand we might not be ready. But I want to encourage you all to imagine what it would be like to adopt the eighth principle for our own spiritual growth and to support BIPOC UU organizers. I encourage all of us to imagine what it would be like to make room for more like-hearted and like-minded people who don't yet always feel welcome at First Parish and in Unitarian Universalism, because our work is not finished toward being truly and fully anti-oppressive. I encourage us all to imagine what it would be like for us to live out journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. May we be a blessing to one another on this journey. Blessed be, and amen.
This rich ritual was adapted from Black UU minister Reverend Carol Thomas Sissel. If you are watching from home, you will need to collect a few things to use in our ritual. In just a minute, we will play some music as you collect the materials you will need, which include a small bowl, a glass of water and salt, a candle, and a match or lighter. One more time, you will need a small bowl, a glass of water and salt, a candle, and something to light the candle with. Maybe someone was able to capture that and put it in the chat box for us. Please take a moment to collect those items now. If you don't have one or more of these items, that is okay. You will still be able to participate. This ritual will unfold in 3 parts. The first involves a moment of lamentation for all the ways that as a denomination we have fallen short of our highest UU principles when it comes to building beloved community. The second involves preparing ourselves for change, remembering that we are a covenantal faith community and that change is a part of our promise to each other. And the third involves setting intentions for the future of our faith.
Please join me in a moment of lamentation. I invite you along with Sarah Elizabeth at home to fill your small bowl with some of the water in the glass, and then take a pinch of salt and add it to the bowl to create tears of healing. With each pinch of salt you add, you can say aloud a sorrow for the ways that our church or our faith movement has failed to our commitment to create beloved community.
The fact that our first minister at First Parish was an enslaver.
Our failure historically to fellowship or call religious professionals of color to our pulpits and to our staff teams.
The fact that we still struggle to decenter whiteness and other forms of privilege in UU worship and curricula.
We grieve what has been done, what we've named in this sanctuary, and what you have named in your hearts, in your homes. We honor and we lament.
We cannot go forward creating beloved community without acknowledging our past. We also cannot go forward without noticing those things that come up in ourselves when we are undergoing a change. It is important to remember our very human tendency to resist certain changes, especially when it comes to the things that we love, like our 7 principles. So I invite you at home into the second part of our ritual to light your candle along with Sarah Elizabeth. I invite you into a moment of contemplation as you watch the flame of your candle burn. Watch the wick and the wax as they change gradually, while on the whole, it still holds the integrity of a candle. Might we be able to trust that our church can be like this candle, holding on to our integrity and UU identity, while small parts of the way things have always been done change? We can grieve for a minute that the wax gets smaller as it is lit, grieving those things that are lost during any change. The flame is an important symbol to UUs, symbolizing the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. And all of these things can hold us and guide us through a change. We remember that even as things change, the center can still hold. We tend to our grief around what is lost when things change. We make room for the uncertain, but maybe much better future.
Keeping in mind those things that have been squandered and lost, and feeling a little bit more ready for change, we name our intentions for the future of our faith. In the words of Black UU minister, Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt, we choose at this moment to lay down the burden of our shortcomings and grasp the courage to begin anew. Together, we affirm our capacity for goodness and grace, for freedom and purpose and joy. We are not trapped in our past, but freed by creation to live and grow today. We invite you now to enter into the chat box, either on Zoom or YouTube, your ending to this statement. I hope that at First Parish we journey towards spiritual wholeness by, and then fill in your intention. One more time, I hope that at First Parish we journey towards spiritual wholeness by. Take a minute to write into the chat, or hold what you're thinking about in your heart, mull over it, write it down later. With our intentions clearly stated, being stated, it's time now to bless our hands to prepare for this holy work of building beloved community. You are welcome, as Sarah Elizabeth will, to pour some water over your hands into the small saltwater bowl. Here at our church, on the altar, we have water from our water communion ceremony just a couple of weeks ago. If you're watching with someone else, you might bless each other's hands, or you might just pour water directly into the bowl. As we bless our hands for this work, we also notice that the tears in our bowl become more diluted, the salt more diluted, though the salt will never fully disappear.
Together, we have lamented the past, prepared for change, named our intentions, and blessed our hands for this holy work. Our work is not done. So much more is required of us. Know this: we will make mistakes as we move forward and seek to serve each other. We will at times shy away from the fiery truth needed to truly change. And when embraced, The flames of change will scorch our hearts and singe our hands. It will not be easy. But today we make a start, a beginning. May that be so. And blessed be, and amen.
Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Walking and talking with my mind, stay on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind, stay on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind, stay on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Singing and praying with my mind, stay on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind, stay on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind, stay on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
As we close our worship today, please remember that all are welcome to join Zoom's social hour just after this service has ended. And then please, drop by our front lawn at 23 Dedham Avenue at 4:30 p.m. to join us for our autumnal equinox ritual, honoring this moment of seasonal transformation. We also invite youth, children, and their families at 3:30 p.m., immediately preceding the ritual, for an all-ages religious exploration gathering filled with activities celebrating the autumnal equinox and its rich lessons of balance. Please wear your mask for the safety and comfort of all at both of these outdoor events. Please note that Song Squad will be on Zoom this afternoon. If this applies to you, please check your email for more details. And on that note, keep a careful eye out for emails and social media posts from First Parish so that we can keep up with opportunities for connection for all ages throughout the week during these times of physical isolation. You can sign up for our weekly email by clicking on Subscribe to Newsletter on our website, uuneedham.org. If you fall ill or need any pastoral support during this difficult year, please reach out to me, to Reverend Katie, or to Jenna Crawford and the amazing pastoral care team. And please let our office administrator, Susanna Whitman, at office@uuneedham.org know if you need assistance logging into our Realm directory system. We always extinguish our chalice with words promising to carry its flame in our hearts until we are together again. No matter how long it is until we are together again. Please join me from home in saying these words, written by Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Elizabeth Selly Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
So every soul is